Hi and welcome to this screencast for your Ancient World History class. As you can notice here on this screen, I'm using a different whiteboard this time. The whiteboard that I usually used has for some reason been discontinued. So I'm trying out this new whiteboard. It's not ideal, but I think it will work quite well since this screencast will be relatively short. As with all screencasts, make sure that you take down the notes, and if you have any questions, let me know in class on Monday. So this is chapter 12, section 1, and what we will be talking about today is the Tang Dynasty. And as I said in class on the block day, this is considered one of the better dynasties in Chinese history. So it's one of the better dynasties in Chinese history, and we'll take a look at a couple of reasons why historians consider this to be one of the better dynasties in Chinese history. One of the reasons is that they had a couple of very, very good rulers, and we'll take a look at one of those rulers here today. This ruler's name is Tangdynasty, and he ruled from 626 until 649. And he accomplished a number of different and very important things. He really, for one thing, expanded territory of China. So if we take a look at this map that I have for you here, this is a map of East Asia, and that's this area right here that's inside these black lines here is the Tang Dynasty. So as you can see, China of today would consist of just about all of this right here. So Tang China is a little bit smaller, but it's still a lot bigger than it was in the past dynasties. So he expanded the territory of China. That's what was one of the things that he did. So as I'm sure you can understand, he was a great military leader. He was a great military leader. This is one of his key attributes that made him so successful. Another thing that was really good with Tang Taizong was the fact that he was very insistent on creating a good, sound, well-functioning government. So in order to do that, he restored the civil service examination. And as you might remember from when we studied Chinese history earlier, the civil service examination was a test that you had to take in order to be able to work for the government. And during this time period after the Han Dynasty, when we had these 300 years of civil war, you might remember that we talked about that in class during the block day. The civil service examination has basically disappeared. During the Sui Dynasty, when we had the two emperors, Wen Di and Sui Yangdi, they never used the civil service examination. So Tang Taizong was the first one to restore the civil service examination. And this was very, very successful and provided for a very strong government. So it provided for a strong government that worked very well. There was very little corruption. And the people that worked in the government took care of their jobs very well, and they did their jobs with great pride, and everything was working very, very well. The other thing that Tang Taizong did was that he started a land reform. As you might remember from earlier discussions of Chinese history, one of the main problems that the Chinese people often had was the fact that there was so little farmland to go around. Only about 12 to 13% of all of China was able to be used for farming. So there was often a great competition between peasants and between large landowners, who was going to get this land and who was going to be able to use this land. During this time period after the Han Dynasty, again, when we had this civil war, a lot of small peasants had lost their land, and this land had been taken by the large landowners. So you had a great many people that did not have any land. So what Tang Taizong did was that he started a land reform where he supplied lower class peasants with land. And he did this in two ways. One was that because of the fact that he expanded the territory, he could use some of that new land to give to peasants. That was the first thing that he did. So he gave the new land to lower class peasants. The other thing that he did was that he took some land from the large landowners and gave that land to the lower class peasants. Now, as I'm sure you understand, that was not necessarily very popular with the upper classes. So what he did was that he lowered the tax rate for the lower classes in return for giving up some of this land. So he gave the upper classes an incentive to give up not all of their land, but a little bit of their land to the lower classes. So he gave the upper classes a lower tax rate in return for giving up some of their land. So the upper classes were quite happy with this. The lower classes were happy because they received some land, and society was much more stable, and there were a lot more happy people, content people, and they were quite pleased with the progress that Chinese society was doing. Another thing that Tang Taizong did was that he really focused on education. He created schools, not just for the upper class, which had been in the case before, but also for the lower classes. Now, to be fair, not everyone would be able to go to these schools, and there were still relatively few people from the lower classes that were able to access these schools. But still, this is still an improvement compared to earlier times in Chinese history, with only the very wealthiest and the upper part of society had been able to go to school. So he created schools which helped improve society. The historians that have looked at this have looked at the Tang Dynasty, and they have looked at especially Tang Taizong as kind of a turning point in Chinese history. From here on out, from about the 600s forward, Chinese history is not as unstable as it has been in the past. There's still ups and downs, but the Chinese dynastic cycle is a little bit more stable, and we don't have these huge dips where we have hundreds and hundreds of years of civil war. So the Tang Dynasty is considered a turning point in Chinese history. And again, much of this is due to the efforts of Tang Taizong, and he really set a good pattern for the rest of the rulers that came after him. And as a little finishing touch here, I have a picture of Tang Taizong. This is him, a little bit bigger picture right there, dressed in a festive yellow dress here. So to sum up here, the Tang Dynasty is considered a turning point in Chinese history, and a turning point for the better, where society got better, it got more stable, and especially for the lower classes, life was a little bit easier than it had been in the past. That is it for this screencast. I hope you were able to understand everything. This was hopefully not too terribly complicated, and we will pick up our discussion of the Tang Dynasty on Monday. I hope that you have a great weekend and enjoy the beautiful weather that we're supposed to have.